Hi friends, my name is Droolbatz and it's so nice to see you. Today I'm going to be discussing the 2018 film Suspiria. We're going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. The year is 1977. Susie, who is a young Mennonite runaway girl, goes to Germany and joins the Marcos dance school. She's never had any formal training, but she wows them on her very first audition and is immediately accepted. At the school, she discovers that one of the students, Patricia, who she's never met, has gone missing, and Patricia has been involved in some political groups kind of going on in the city. Patricia has gone missing from the school. Some of the students believe it's due to her political activism. However, she had been saying some crazy things about witches and all of that before she left, so some of the students think that the matrons of the dance school were abusing Patricia in some way, manipulating her or doing things like that. Despite that drama, Susie is quickly integrated into the school and she dances amazingly. Her very first day, she kind of gets thrown into a dance and she decides to dance the lead, which had been Patricia's role. And while she's dancing below in a hidden room, a girl who kind of gets lost leaving the group, her movements start mimicking Susie's from up above, and the girl unfortunately dies because of the violent energies that Susie's dancing is throwing her way. It makes you wonder, clearly there's some sort of telekinesis witchcraft going on. How far does it go, however? Will the witches take advantage of Susie as she becomes their star dancer, or will the other students succumb? What's going on? Whatever happened to Patricia? That's all I'm going to tell you for now. So Suspiria 2018 is kind of an homage to this movie called Suspiria that was made in 1977. While the movies kind of deal with the same subject matter, they are very different. The original Suspiria in 1977 was known for its vibrant colors. If you see the movie, there are so many vibrant, gorgeous reds, bright greens, beautiful yellows, pinks, purples, pretty much every color you can think of, just really vibrantly. This movie, by contrast, is fairly muted. You'll notice if you watch that most of the colors are not primary colors. There's a lot of browns and grays. It's the director discussed wanting to make the movie look more barren and wintry in contrast to the kind of bombastic original. So the 2018 version of this movie, the one that I watched and that we are going to be discussing right now, utilizes a lot of very fast zooms. It's pretty obvious that someone is holding the camera and they kind of ran with it. It kind of reminds me of a lot of Stanley Kubrick movies and movies in the old days where you could tell that there was a hand guiding the camera. A lot of movies nowadays don't do that. It gives the camera kind of like a shaky and intimate feel, and it adds to the spookiness. This movie also used a lot of kind of longer cut scenes, which is also a little bit less common generally in horror movies nowadays, movies in general nowadays, which tend to have a lot more of the quick cut scenes, which isn't necessarily bad, but it does kind of reflect a general changing in like general theater goers preferences. So in that way, with the shaky fast zooms in and like the slower cut scenes, this movie had kind of like an intentionally older style feel to it. This movie is of course set at a dance school, so dancing is a main element. The way that the camera works shows the dancers. You feel very much like you're in the moment. You really like see the dancers moving, and the way that the audio is you really hear them breathing a lot, and it's very cool. It kind of adds to like the barren feel because you can really hear them, whereas like at a normal dance performance you wouldn't hear them breathing if you were in the audience. It adds a little bit of like a sensual layer to it as well, because you feel very intimately connected to the dancers because you don't just see them moving, but like you hear them, especially Susie's character. This movie's runtime is 152 minutes. It's over 2 hours long, which for a horror movie is pretty lengthy. I think that length alone will deter some people. There are points where the movie does kind of lag and go off in tangents, but I think ultimately it's a very moody film, and if you have the patience for it, you will enjoy it. That said, it is one of the longer horror movies that I have seen. So at 152 minutes, Suspiria was quite long, and with a large, diverse cast of characters, it's pretty obvious that while the acting is good, there are a lot of moving parts to keep track of. It presents itself as a very complex, very introspective film. As far as the scares go, the scares in this movie are fairly well spaced throughout the movie. There is a little bit of arguably dead time. I think it is appropriate with the story, but it really builds with the tension and release, rather than movies where the tension mounts and mounts. This movie, it'll rise and then fall and rise and fall, so you're kind of pulled along with the flow. Most of the scares are kind of the practical scares, uses of contortionists or like plays with shadows, things like that. There is some CGI and, editing tricks like that, but not too many. It's pretty obvious that this movie had a high budget and a lot of creative drive, and the director really had a specific vision with where he was going. Now I'm going to be discussing how this movie stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I will be spoiling parts of this movie, so if you don't want spoilers, I recommend that you go watch Suspiria for yourself. It was lovely having you, and I hope to see you in a future video if you are leaving. If you are not, thank you so much for sticking around. As this movie goes along, we see Susie start to grow in power with her dancing. She's never been trained, but she's very good, and under the tutelage of Madame Blanc, she gets very good at dancing, but as she gets good at dancing, even more so than she already was, it's pretty clear Susie's not totally dumb. She knows something's going on. She makes friends with this girl named Sarah, who is very close to Patricia. Sarah's doing some investigating in this school. There's this psychiatrist or psychoanalyst, the equivalent of a psychiatrist, psychologist, in 1977 Germany, and he was Patricia's doctor. He approached the girls after Patricia disappeared and was kind of telling them of her fears, so Sarah took it upon herself to investigate, and she discovers that there are hidden parts in this dance studio where there are these creepy branches and things growing out. She finds these bodies of her former classmates withered and unable to escape in the dark. It's very creepy. It's very obvious that witchcraft is going on, and it appears that it's all leading up to one spectacular event. This woman who founded the school, named Mother Marcos, who everyone said had died a long time ago, she's actually still alive. She's hundreds of years old, and they want to put her consciousness into Susie's body so that she, a witch, can continue living. I don't want to get too much into the plot because it's this kind of big weavy windy thing, and I think ultimately it's up to the viewers to kind of determine what truly is the plot. In general, movies about girls at schools where there's witchcraft often involves an element of bullying. In this movie, the girls were not the witches, it was the matrons of the school, and bullying really wasn't an issue. In that way, it felt like a mature film, and it made it feel like a movie that had intention rather than just, oh, bullying, which, like, movies about witches bullying each other in school, like, especially when you're, like, a younger person, I think that can be interesting if you're like, I want to see Gossip Girl, but with witches or something like that. But that said, it had a very mature feeling, and because the matrons were the witches, the girls didn't know that they were part of the coven, really. They were just kind of an accessory to it. It raises different questions rather than like, oh, bullying, like where does strength come from? It kind of raises questions about where does, like what is the obligation of someone in power to the people below them? One notable contrast between this movie and the 1977 version of the same film is this movie had a lot of plot and side plot about this psychoanalyst, psychiatrist doctor who lives in the city. So this movie takes place during the German Autumn, which was a time of really high political activity during the 70s, and this movie kind of fixates on how that relates to you know, like the generational guilt of, you know, Nazism and the Holocaust and things like that. And a lot of the doctor's little journey and stuff kind of raises the question, like, you know, the government is like being cruel to people, and you know, it's like they're in power but they're abusing the people below them. So are the matrons of this school, who are supposed to be protecting the girls underneath them. Instead, they're like drawing their energy and like breaking their legs with a spell whenever they feel like it and things like that. So that's kind of a big thing. I personally thought it was okay to have it in the movie. Some critics really dislike it. They feel it makes the movie too long, and they feel like it tried to shoehorn politics in there because it gets pretty detailed on what's going on during the German autumn. Suspiria 2018 had a big budget, and I think it was advertised pretty well. I saw advertisements for it several places, but it had a very, very limited and small release, you guys. So, and it's not on Netflix, and I don't think it's out on DVD yet. Anyway, the point is, sometimes you have to go to the websites that'll give your computer a virus to watch, and they don't always have subtitles. And I really wanted to review this movie. I'd been interested in seeing it for a while, and someone kind of gave me the nudge to like just go watch it right now, so I did. And I did not have the German subtitles. And the thing is, you don't need them to understand some of the themes, like the abuse of power and like the reflection of outside the school versus inside the school. But where you need them is with the political elements, which honestly have like no bearing on the actual plot to me, and they almost made it feel like it's trying to be a biopic of some kind, like about this doctor. I thought it was really weird that they kept diverging and just focusing on this old man, because the old man has basically no bearing on the plot. Even at the end, they try to give him like a meaningful scene, and it really isn't. Not that it's not meaningful, but it doesn't matter, I guess. I guess that means it's not meaningful, but anyway. It really felt like the director of this movie was intentionally trying to make it a little bit of something besides just a horror movie, like a reflection type movie. And the original Suspiria was very much like a you know, in your face movie. And while it was set in Germany, the political elements were not there. It was not so much about that. It was more about, you know, the witchcraft and the school and Susie. With and without subtitles, they are completely separate movies, because with the subtitles, and you know, I looked up like what was supposed to be being said and stuff in summaries after I watched it. It's very much focused on the political and very much focused on like the specifics, whereas without the subtitles, it's more focused on the human interaction. You can see the matrons getting together and plotting. You can't tell what they're specifically doing, but it doesn't really matter what they're specifically saying, because you can see the connection, and that's the focus of the theme anyway. And so I really think that actually, with the political elements and like the historical elements, it was, I agree with some of the critics that it was very shoehorned in there. It made the movie quite long, and I think it honestly did distract from the other themes. So what really struck me about this movie is that while it's pretty clear that the coven and the matrons were, you know, using and abusing the girls beneath them, it honestly didn't strike me that they were evil. Like, I know, like, I tend to think of like witches in movies as being evil, and especially, you know, considering death, but it's like they weren't mercilessly preying on every single girl. It seemed like they only really went after the girls who kind of were going after them initially. Like Patricia, I think, had been singled out to like have Mother Marcos go into her body, so that's why she kind of got singled out. But then, you know, she vanished, so Susie was, you know, showed up in her place, and then Susie was focused on. But the other girls, for the most part, their energy wasn't taken. The thing is, they got nightmares being there, but they didn't know why. I know that like the coven is evil, but like it wasn't portrayed in an evil way, and it was just really interesting. And I've really not seen like covens displayed that way before. The point is that whether the coven is evil or not, the matriarchy within the school was supposed to reflect the patriarchy outside the school. I believe that's why the political elements were intertwined. However, I think that made the plot quite muddy. In general, anytime you do anything with witches, you know, novels, TV shows, books, whatever, it tends to become kind of a gendered topic, you know, just because the history of like, you know, women as witches and stuff. Even if it's not intended to be that way, a lot of people will make it gendered audience-wise, of course. This movie is no exception. The original Suspiria is part of a trilogy of movies called the Three Mothers trilogy. There are basically three ancient witch mothers: the Mother of Tears, the Mother of Sighs, and one other one. Basically, it's about these three witches rising to power. This movie, because it's got that underlying theme of Mother Suspiriorum, you would immediately assume that it could be like, you know, about matriarchy and like motherhood and stuff. I really question how much that theme truly came through the movie. Like I said, a lot of people try to make these witched movies kind of gendered. Some people felt that by randomly having the old man kind of float in and out of the screen, it was trying to like highlight, you know, oh, like women using other women, like women turning against each other and blah 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 and stuff like that. And right now the whole, like, you know, in this exact terminology, pitting women against other women terminology, it's a very big topic right now, and the notion that like women are expected to compete with each other, whether you actually personally were raised that way or not, whether you personally think society is that way or not, that is the big topic right now. And I think a lot of reviewers kind of, I don't think they thought that movie was going there, but then the more that the old man was integrated into the movie, that's kind of how it came across. I really didn't get that vibe until I read some of the criticisms, and then I'm like, well, I can see where people would take it that way. It's kind of the rule that a good horror movie reflects the fears of the generation. For example, the old Carrie movie kind of, you know, reflects the fear of the sexual revolution that was happening, whereas like the new Carrie was kind of skewed to focus more on the bullying aspect, which is, you know, a big fear for people concerning young people, especially because more and more people commit suicide due to bullying. I think this movie, while I didn't really enjoy the extra political elements and stuff, they kind of did reflect the shift in fears, which right now a lot of people, I mean across the globe, but it's getting more and more that people are not trusting their governments, not trusting their leaders. Some people aren't trusting their teachers. Basically, people are not trusting the people above them who are kind of supposed to take care of them, to take care of them. The people who are responsible for our health are not trustworthy in the eyes of a lot of people, and this movie kind of reflects that, how the people above take advantage and abuse the people below. And I think that's why this movie would be considered like a deep and good horror movie, because it does, I think, reflect a big cultural fear that's going on right now. But it did make the movie unnecessarily long, and I think it did take away from certain elements of the original. One thing about the color scheme that I mentioned before, the original Suspiria was one of the most distinctive elements for a lot of people was the bright colors, so many colors, and the really interesting geometric designs that a lot of the set had. This version of Suspiria had a really cool architecture setup as well, but the muted colors, I think it was good that the director chose to go a different route with it. However, a lot of movies nowadays, a lot of horror movies at least, tend to stray into the using fewer and fewer colors. Like, usually I think it's just an artistic choice. They go for like the more muted colors because they think it makes a movie have more gravity than to have vibrant colors. And in that way, the director choosing to have this kind of bleak and wintry color scheme made the movie a little bit more modern feeling, just because it kind of jumped on that modern trend, even if it wasn't intentionally supposed to feel that way. Altogether, it's got the same concept as the original Suspiria, but it is a different film completely. The story itself is different, the themes are different, the approach is different. It's just a different movie. I think as far as movies about witches, a lot of times they do try to incorporate more of the chanting and stuff than dance moves, and I have seen stuff about witches and dancing and things like that, but I thought the way that this movie did it was interesting and cool. Dance is one of these things that I enjoy, but I have almost no understanding of, and the more I see dance, the less I understand it, honestly. One of my fears going into this movie, and one of the reasons I hesitated to see it for a while, is because I don't know a lot about dance, ballet or modern dance or anything, and so I was afraid that me not knowing that would detract from my ability to watch the movie and like enjoy it and understand it and get the themes, but it really didn't. If anything, just not knowing German and like not knowing a lot about Germany in the 70s was more detrimental. So in that way, I would say it was cool because you get the dance experience, and the approach to incorporating that with the notion of, you know, spells and witchcraft was kind of uniquely done, but not so uniquely that you're kind of like off put. The original Suspiria, while set in a dance school, it didn't have nearly as much dancing, and dancing wasn't quite as much the focus. So I thought that was kind of cool how they kind of utilized the setting in this one. Anyway, like I said, it's a completely different movie. And I think that's kind of one of the important things too, is with this movie, with Suspiria, they don't, you know, they don't hide the fact that it's witchcraft. You're not left in suspense. You learn pretty early on that it's, you know, that it is straight up witchcraft. It's not like, oh, there's just something spooky going on. Like, no, you learn it's witches straight up. And I think the notion that the director probably had, because Suspiria originally was the most, not the most, but it is one of the more famous horror movies. It's very, very renowned. And I think he knew that a lot of people would know of it. And I think the notion in his mind was that people who'd seen the original Suspiria would recall that and see this new one. People who did not know of the original Suspiria, perhaps because we weren't born yet, or we don't run in circles that have a lot of talk of horror movies and stuff, they would see ads for it, they'd get curious, and they'd look it up, and they'd immediately know that it was about witches. In that way, I think they kind of took advantage of the audience's foreknowledge of what the movie might be about, and so they didn't kind of, you know, waste time playing mind games like, are they actually witches? They got right down to the point quite quickly, and I thought that was a good move, and in general is not one that a lot of movies have the benefit of doing nowadays, especially not remakes. Most people prefer to pretend that the audience doesn't know, even if we already know going in what we're going to see. In summary, they're two very separate movies, the original Suspiria and this modern Suspiria, and both movies are very different from a lot of, you know, approaches to schoolgirl type witchcraft. So I think both are very unique movies, and they're both very unique from each other. If I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. It was very good. My main criticism with the movie is that it is extremely long, and I think that while it's definitely got some interesting themes, dragging the outside world, specifically with the old man psychoanalyst character and the political stuff going on in Germany, while I think it provides a cool world-building context, it does kind of devalue some of the other themes being explored because they're not given the same time of day. And it's because it is a long movie, you have to process a lot. And I think for a lot of people watching this movie, a lot of the themes will kind of blur and blend together because you're watching so much in one sitting. Maybe you won't if you break the movie up over, you know, 2 or 3 days or something, but if they just cut out a little bit more, I would say it would be a perfect movie. It's got a lot very positively going on. I just think some people will be off-put if they go into this movie expecting an intellectual experience because some of the themes are muddied just by there being too many. Critics who saw this movie are very polarized. Some loved it, some hated it. They all acknowledge that it's a separate film from the original Suspiria, but they have really polarized opinions. So I'd like to know, what are your opinions? Have you seen the original Suspiria? And if so, do you think the films are comparable? Which one do you think is better? My question, of course, is I was watching this movie and I'm like, I don't know anything about dance, and I also don't know that much about Germany. In American public schools, we kind of stop learning about Germany after, you know, World War II, and then the rest is like US history up till you graduate. And so I didn't really know about the German Autumn. I had to look it up just so I would know. It kind of makes me wonder, you know, not knowing about dance, not knowing about the political atmosphere of the movie, do you have to understand something to enjoy it? is it important to understand something to enjoy it? Like, I don't know much about dance. I think I enjoy it, but would I enjoy it more if I knew about it, or would that take away the meaning? Would it demean what they have done to have someone like me who doesn't know anything about dance or witchcraft or Germany watch this movie without any background knowledge? I don't know. Do you think it's important to have an understanding to enjoy something? Do you think it's important? Do you think it's necessary? I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm just trying to think up ideas. This movie got me thinking a lot, and so, I don't know, have a lot of thoughts running around. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have any. Please let me know if you have anything to say. Anything at all. Anything at all. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this review was interesting and helpful to you. I hope it was enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, I review horror movies on this channel, and if you're interested, you should totally subscribe, because I review horror movies and we have a good time here just talking about movies and things like that. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day or night or afternoon or midnight or lunch break or whatever. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.